Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you for inviting me. It's a big questions that you asked me with regard to where should I bring Sabah to. But we are so grateful that we have won the last elections when I believe that was voice coming from the people, and I'm sure that those people who voted us in with the intentions in mind that we will do something different, and it will definitely put in Sabah and Sabah to in the right place to ensure not only in terms of providing jobs opportunity but also the growth that we can ensure to make sure that Sabah will be a developed state. But having said that, I've looked into some of the area where I think Sabah has the advantages compared to many states in Malaysia, and also comparing with other regional countries like Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines. We must be so glad and so grateful that Sabah is blessed with all sort of resources that we have, you name it, not only in terms of mineral, oil, gas, timber, and also the beauty of the place. You have so many islands that you can't get it in any part of the country within reach of less than 2 hours. You can actually reach to the mountain, you can go to the island and spending your time there with your family, and you can also get all the cheapest seafood in the country. And also we are blessed with all sort of things, the culture rich in terms of diversity that we have, and that is another area where I think if we want to explore the questions where we should bring Sabah, we have to look into what do we have that to ensure that we have the niche, not only to ensure that growth will be there, but putting Sabah into a very competitive state in this part of the world, in this part of the region. So I'm quite sure, I think the way forward for Sabah is definitely industrialization. There's no question of that. We can't be so dependent on exploiting our natural resources without going downstream. Because I believe that it has been seen in many parts of the world. I mean, we have seen countries who has been blessed with resources, you name it, Middle East, but they haven't gone far into downstream, exploiting to the maximum the limited resources that they have. So I think this is what our focus is, to ensure that the way forward for Sabah is definitely industrializations. But to realize that, we have to have the capacity. Of course, the manpower, we do have manpower in Sabah, but we have to enhance, not only in terms of the knowledge, the capacity that they have, to ensure that they can exploit what we have in part of the world. Talking about industrializations, definitely the raw materials that we have, for example, like timber, we were so blessed, but unfortunately all this while, for the last how many years since we got our independence, we have never exploited it to the maximum. We have seen countries have progressed, even without the natural resources, you name it, Japan, Singapore, even for that matter, places like Spain and Italy, they can produce all sorts of things. In spite of them have to import raw materials into their country, and they become the biggest producer of furniture making, of all sorts of things. So I think this is where I'm quite sure, I think Sabah, the way forward is definitely industrialization, but we have to segment which particular sector where we have the advantage. We cannot be too ambitious too much. While we have limited capacity in terms of finance, we have limited capacity in terms of human resource that we have. I think those are the area we have to enhance to ensure that by then, when we embark on certain things, that we can be there, very competitive. But to realize that, of course, it needs a lot of things. Yeah? So I think basically the questions when you ask me, where should I bring Sabah to? When we industrialize Sabah, definitely end of the day, the people in Sabah will definitely benefit out of it, because jobs opportunity will be there and business opportunity will be there too. So I do hope that we will be able to realize that. Of course, it cannot be done overnight. Nothing can you do within a short period of time. You have to build up all what I have said just now in terms of human capital, in terms of the infrastructure that we have. We can't actually export some of the raw material that we have if we don't have the proper kind of transport system, the port that we require. So these are the area when I look at it. Sabah has the potential, far much better than any other state in the country. But whatever growth that we realize, end of the day, it's not only for the benefit of the state of Sabah. I'm quite sure, I think as a whole, Malaysian will definitely benefit out of it, because the vast amount of money that we will realize from it, definitely they will be shared. I mean, one good example is tourism, you know. The bulk of easily about 70% will be, it goes into the federal bank, into the federal kitty. So I think if we were to develop that, we should be mindful it is not only for Sabah, but also for the country of Malaysia. But I do believe that Sabah has the potential compared to other many places in this part of the area. It's not only we are blessed with resources, but with the weather too, in Sabah. Yeah, but before that, I think it's indeed very important, as I mentioned to you just now, that we need to build up our capacity. And that is why we have set up Ministry of Education and Innovation for the first time in the history of Sabah. And to ensure that we will have ample supply of human capital, capable of providing the skill, the manpower that we require in all the sectors that we have already identified as a priority sector in Sabah. So I believe that, for example, like infrastructure is definitely one area. You talk about networking, connectivity, that is definitely a very crucial things that we need to do. So that's why infrastructure is still there. As compared to other states, we are far behind. I think easily about 10 years compared to certain places in West Malaysia or Semenanjung. Even for that matter, compared to other states like Sarawak too, we are still lagging behind in terms of basic infrastructure. You talk about water, you talk about electricity. So that is that are the areas that we believe that we need to look into to ensure that whatever we have, we must sort of like not only to bundle it together, but we have to look into funding coming from federal, funding coming from the state, and we have to maximize to the best of Sabah, because I believe that federal government is also giving us, citing an example like this coming budget, which we heard recently that they're going to allocate a few billions of money. I do hope that selective area, you talk about road, connectivity, you talk about air connectivity, that need to be enhanced. I'm quite sure, I think if that is done, that will definitely putting Sabah in the right place. I've said earlier with regard to the capacity that we are so blessed with all the natural resources that we have. But knowing that, if we were to move forward, industrializations, definitely the market will not be in Sabah. We have to look into some of the market, not only within the country, but also the neighboring region that we have. You talk about China, you talk about Hong Kong, you talk about Japan. These are the market area that we intend to do to ensure that we can reach them out. But to realize that, we have to have a proper infrastructure, not only in terms of road, railway line, but also port. Because I'm sure that we can't export all the goods that we have produced through air freight, because it will be very costly unless it is perishable good. You talk of vegetable, fruits, and all sorts of things. But you talk about some of the raw material that we need to exploit. You talk about gas, LNG. But we have to have a proper port to ensure that Sabah will be easily accessed to the nearest market that we have. But to ensure to do that, that's why you have said about port like Kota Kinabalu Port Sipangar, which has been there. But I've looked into it, but the capacity need to be enhanced. But to ensure that, we have to look into the environment as well within that area, because under Sipangar there's also naval base there, you have universities there. I think for the time being, within a short period of say like 10 years, still Sipangar is very crucial and very important for us. That is why the state government have embarked into how best we can enhance the capacity of Sipangar to become where cargoes can be handled even with a big volume within this say like 5 years. So I think, I'm quite sure, I think this will enable Sabah to move forward to ensure that we can reach not only cargoes into the state, but also cargo out of the state. So I think that is very indeed crucial, because we have been receiving goods coming in into the state, but a limited kind of amount of goods that we need to export from Sabah itself. That's why the only way to move forward is industrialization, so we can go downstream and all the byproduct that we produce to this sort of industry, selective industry, you name it, oil, chemical, even to the extent furniture, but we need a proper form. So I believe that Sipanggar is definitely one area. I've looked into it and we're expanding it. But of course there's a limited capacity there because Sipanggar is also a place where it is so near to the city of Kinabalu. So the way forward in the future will definitely another port in Kudat there. So we are blessed because this area, the route Sabah, where Sabah is located, is quite central as compared to other states, even Sarawak, even for that matter compared to Singapore. It is so near to China, it's so near to Japan, it's so near to Hong Kong. So one can imagine if we were to develop Sipanggar as a center for us to getting goods into and out, I'm quite sure it will benefit the country as a whole. So that is one of the areas that we have to ensure that we can develop further. And in terms of only not the capacity, but handling cargoes, I think we have to build it up. Well, I have said just now, with regard to area that we need to ensure that we can realize is investment coming from outside the region itself, not only investors coming from our neighboring countries, or even investors coming in from Peninsula, but also I do hope that there will be investors coming from places like China, from Europe, from US too, which I'm quite sure they do realize that this is one particular state in this part of the country, of Malaysia, has the greatest potential of all. You talk about location-wise, you talk about the natural resources that we have. Not many states in Malaysia having oil, having gas, having timber, tourism, a place that you can spend your lifetime there with your family. I think this is where the area that we need to ensure that we have the right partner, not only in terms of coming into it. For example, like China, when we collaborate with China, it is not only the money that we require, it is not only the technology that we require from this part of the area, but also the market. So one can imagine China with a huge populations, and they can just take it, whatever we produce, for example, like chips, wood downstream, that they use, the need for pulp, the demand for pulp in China is good enough. If you get the supply from, you get a demand from them. So I'm quite sure, these are the areas that I do hope that how best we can attract investors from abroad to come into Sabah. Yeah, so in the near future, we are going to do a lot of promotions, going abroad, meeting some of the investors, not only in China, but also in Europe too. Yeah, and I've been inviting some of my colleagues too, who have some connectivity with some people in US, so to attract them, even as far as Australia too. I've already informed the High Commissioners to ensure that we do encourage. This is a place for them to invest on a win-win situation, because it's not only we want to benefit out of it, but we want our investors too, in the long run, to benefit.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a pleasure.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure. My pleasure indeed for allowing me to be here.